Hi, I'm Cassidy. I am the director of the Clams Independent Film Festival, and with me today is Mischa Webley, the creative mind behind Metal. Mischa, thank you so much for chatting with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Mischa, your film Metal is a beautiful portrayal of a grandfather dealing with grief and kind of finding art as a way to cope with that. Where did that kind of inspiration come from, and kind of the starting process of making this film? What was that like for you?
Yeah, the original inspiration is this kind of an old idea from a good friend of mine back when we were in high schools and kind of juvenile delinquents. We did a lot of graffiti, and we had just kicked around an idea way back when about a grandfather who does graffiti. We just thought it was a kind of cool concept, and it just stuck in my head for a long time. And I started writing it in 2020 or so, and sort of merged into really kind of an exploration of this grandfather kind of not just doing graffiti, but kind of doing it as a way to kind of work through grief and mourning. And it was a wild year, I think we all remember. So I think we were all kind of working through a lot, and I think that probably kind of played into it. And it kind of just became a way to explore that, what the role of art can be in doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's so interesting. So this is almost, I mean, how long had that idea been then for you?
A
Like,
couple decades. Yeah.
yeah, wow, that's a long time to carry that inspiration and just really, I guess it shows the drive behind wanting to get something done and wanting to share a story and the beauty of an idea. So that's really fascinating. And filming it during COVID too, what were those kind of precautions and challenges like for you while making this film?
Yeah, it was tough. COVID wasn't even the hardest part. When we ended up shooting, it was when there was wildfires raging around Portland, and the whole air was filled with smoke. The sunsets were everything was orange, and we actually had to cancel our first day. We had to push it a day because it was too smoky to be outside. And then COVID, of course, was a big challenge. But we had a small crew, really pretty nimble crew, and did what we could ahead of time to just kind of take the precautions we could. Made sure everyone was on the same page and comfortable, and did it. And in some ways, it was the right film for the time, just because at the end of the day, the film's about one man, and that simplifies some things shooting wise. And I just think it just kind of there was an emotional element just in the context of us shooting, that kind of infused the film. So hopefully it came out on the screen.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's so interesting and so true because when it is just one person's story, it's easier to, do the isolation and the protocol and everything like that. One of my favorite scenes is kind of the first time that he's sneaking out and he leaves through the front door and you see the grieving and she's playing piano and it's beautiful. And so how did kind of these different elements play into the film, whether it was the music or deciding to shoot these different scenes and elements to come together?
Yeah, well, some of it's planned and some of it's found or improvised. So music was always going to be a big part of it, but I really probably even underestimated how much by the end. I think the music came after the film. I worked with a composer. It's an original score, and that's also probably one of my favorite moments in the film too. And that wasn't well, it was written into the script once I figured out that I could shoot at my mom's house, and so that was my mom's house, and she had great ability to kind of to get those kind of shots. There was just and she's a piano teacher, and I've done two films at her house now, and each time I have to use the grand piano. It's right there, so that wasn't originally in the script at all, but I wrote that in because, and then. And it just worked so well, and to have there was a little bit more originally with the mom, where there's a little bit more of a moment later, but what we realized is that moment kind of just captured the whole thing, her experience there without saying anything, which was kind of a lot of the goal or maybe just how the film ended up, a lot of was there's not a lot of talking.
Yeah.
And so just trying to capture those kind of emotional moments, but without dialogue.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love it too because it kind of shows these two different people how they're handling it, but also how they kind of channel that grief and that energy through different forms of art in a way. And so she's
Yeah.
using music as a form, and he's using graffiti, and really to connect with his grandson in that format. So how did you find? I feel like the actors were just kind of so perfect for these different roles. What was it like working with the actors and finding those and who was going to fit the vision you had?
Yeah, the film couldn't be done without Bill, Bill Ray, who's the lead actor. He was fantastic, and I found him actually casting for a different film.
Oh, wow.
I was gearing up to do another film, and he was in the casting call.
Wow.
And I just realized I was like, well, he's the guy in metal. Like he's not going to. He's the guy in metal, and I actually just decided based off of that and that conversation with him, I to actually just bumped metal up into the queue, and we did that one first because it just felt like it was just meant to be. Bill was great. Bill, I've worked with him on a few films now. When I meet a good actor, we work again together. He can just command a room. He can come in. We talked a lot about that his silence was going to have to say everything. And so he has the ability to kind of own the screen and and just kind of bring the weight. And so we talked a lot about that, about kind of having the weight of everything happening and then being released, as the film progresses. And not that many actors can do that. It's harder than dialogue. It's a lot harder than dialogue. You have to say everything without saying anything. And he's a very talented actor. He's been around for a while, and so he just really brought it. And I just so and I loved working with him. It was he made it not fun. He made it great. He made it easy.
Oh, absolutely, and it totally does portray through, in the film itself, just the depth of his emotion without saying, these words and everything like that. I'm curious how the decision for metal to be the tag and for metal to kind of play into that. Was that something that, was close to you as a kid when you with the graffiti, or what how did that, tagline become the name for the film?
I wish there was a great inspiration, but I was just trying to think of good tags
Nice.
that would also make a good title. I knew the title was going to need to be the same thing as the tag.
Right.
Tag could be anything. For a brief minute, it was Meta, and of course, it wants to be Facebook's parent company. um, and then at some point, I just added the L. I was like, "Oh, it's a great word, and it has power." So I don't know how these things happen. Sometimes you just think of them, and then boom, that's it. Becomes once I thought of it, it was obvious that was the title. But there's not a big meaning behind it.
Totally. Well, and that's how a lot of creative sparks come, right? And how things work out in this industry. So totally get that. But you mentioned that you were doing, a different casting call. So what do you want to talk a little bit about kind of different productions you're working on, and just this passion that you have for filmmaking and what might be up next?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've been writing and directing since I was in high school. Since I was a juvenile delinquent, and actually, in the pandemic, really helped. I fell back in love with it and sort of, stepped away for a little while. And just before metal, I had done another short, and I've done five since the beginning of the pandemic. 5 short films, and they're all something of an anthology. And I think the through line there has been a lot of really kind of deep looks into unique kinds of characters and unique situations, but also as a filmmaker, learning to really be very stripped down and be comfortable sometimes if I just shoot the whole film myself and do everything and kind of fall back in love with it like I was just starting out again. Metal was the larger of that group of films, but that, I had a team of 6, 7, or 8 people. It wasn't very big. But I love working that way. It's one of my favorite parts of filmmaking, working with actors, and anything that allows me to do that more intimately. It's kind of how I like to roll. So I've been making that series. I just got done, wrapped a couple, and just starting to kind of put out into film festivals right now. I just 2 weeks ago just finished post production on one of them called Kitty, and I am jumping into something very different next month, which is a kind of darkly comedic sketch comedy series.
Wow. Exciting. That sounds different.
Yeah, it's very different. It's finally a good time to make myself laugh.
I love that. Sometimes you have to be your own comedic relief. So
Oh,
there you
yeah.
go. Well, that's so interesting. I want to talk maybe a little bit more about the anthology of, Black stories in the Pacific Northwest that you've been working on. So, you said you love working with actors. So, were these all kind of narrative films, or have they been some documentaries? What has that process been like?
They're all narrative.
They're all narrative.
Yeah, yeah. I don't do much documentary. I've done a little bit, but these are all narrative films. Some I beginning with Metal, and some maybe 2 or 3 other ones where I wrote in a series. A couple I've written, since 1 or 2 just for the actors. Bill was in another one that I did called Honey. That combined him with one of my other actors that I collaborate with all the time, named Wolfie Beecham, and I wrote a film with both of them in it, along with a third actor, Josh Weinstein, and that was great. My kind of philosophy is just make the film that's in front of me, the one that I can do, and not wait. Don't wait for anything. It's very easy in our business to think we have to kind of wait for permission or wait for money or wait for someone, and that's a trap. And we can always make films. You need a camera and sound, and that's it. So I'm sort of been proving that back to myself and maybe to other people, because it's also more fun that way.
Absolutely.
So
Oh my gosh.
let's make whatever movie I want to make within the limits, that I can and what I can do.
And I think that perfectly encapsulates like the independent filmmaking spirit is like, you don't need to wait. You don't need permission. Like just make.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. That's what, I grew up in the 90s, kind of came into filmmaking in the 90s. That was what it was all about. And I haven't forgotten that. Industry's evolved since then, but maybe away from that, I think I might be coming back to it finally, because it's needed.
Absolutely. Yeah. Way to speak to the heart of it, and what all filmmakers, I think, kind of have that universal feeling of just like, and sometimes you do get stuck in the trap of like, "Ah, man, I don't have this yet. I just want to wait for this section." And that's also difficult when you're balancing. A lot of our filmmakers are balancing full-time jobs and working on different things that make money, but their passion is within independent filmmaking. So like, how do you kind of balance that? What words of advice would you have for someone kind of dealing with this struggle of dichotomy?
Well, I have a full-time job. I have two little girls at home.
Wow.
But I make it happen. Well, at some point I realized, it's always possible, and that's just it. For words of advice, the thing I found is, don't underestimate what 1 hour or 2 hours a day can do for you over a few months. I find time after my daughters are asleep to write or to edit or whatever it is, and I may not feel like it, but I do. But over time, an hour a week is 20 hours a month. That's actually a lot of time, and so it's possible. But also, if you have to tackle projects that are within reach. But more than anything, like I said, I just don't wait. It's or wait for some bigger things, but don't wait. Don't let that keep you from doing the smaller things when you can in front of you. Because you don't want to be on other people's timeline in this business. that could be forever. You know?
Absolutely. Man, that is so true, Misha, and thank you so much for sharing that. But yeah, were there any last thoughts or takeaways that you hope people take away from metal or from any future projects that you're working on?
I think for metal, it was a really one of my favorite films I ever made, and it was a big reminder of how important your collaborators are, which was such a great small team, but every single one of them punched way above their weight, from the actors to my producer Chelsea to my composer Zach, who came out of nowhere, has never composed a film, but just understood it, and that and you can't plan for those things. You just have to find the right people, and once you do, just go with it. And so that was a big takeaway, and I think it shows. I think all that stuff comes through.
Absolutely. Well, Misha, thank you so much for sharing your time with us and sharing your film with us at the Plymouth Independent Film Festival. We're so excited to have it and to share it with the world.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.